Please welcome IT architect from Royal Caribbean Cruises, Paulo Gouveia, and Akamai product manager, Akhil J.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me well?
All right. So let's go into the presentation.
Akhil, the water on the right's mine, eh?
Just keep it in this one. All right. So first of all, thank you, everyone, for joining us. What I want to do is kind of set the agenda for you guys. So one is we're going to talk about what Akamai Sandbox is and kind of go into some history about like how did we in Akamai hear about the problem, how did we build this out, and then transition over to Paulo, who is using the Sandbox in his organization and his experience with the Akamai Sandbox. And he's going to he has an awesome demo setup as well. So I want to kind of make sure that it's not someone in Akamai giving you guys a demo. I want to have Paulo himself kind of showing you how he's been using it in his organization. So with that, I'll first introduce Paulo. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, I'm Paulo. I'm an IT architect and a CDN manager for Royal Caribbean. And it's known for us as a RCCL, but we have multiple brands: Royal Caribbean Cruises, Celebrity Cruises, Azamara Cruises. And I've been an Akamai customer since 1999. So I've seen a lot. I've seen the progression of the platform. So, and I hope you guys learned something new today.
Awesome. Thanks, Paulo. So my name is Akhil Jayaprakash. I'm a product manager with the web performance team. One of the things that I can call out is I've been in the CDN space for 8 years, which is really long. And one of the things that I've recently created is the Akamai Developer Toolkit. So if you have struggling with using our API endpoints or learning about new APIs, it's a neat Chrome extension. You can download it, start using it. Sorry for the plug, but yeah. All right, going into the next one. So some history about when we started thinking about or started hearing about the feedback from customers. There were two kinds of users who told us there are problems that they faced when interfacing with Akamai. The first set of problems was things like, as a developer, I don't really know how my code's going to interact with the CDN. Like a CDN is a black box. I don't know how it's going to work. Now, as an Akamai admin, so most of you here are probably ones who are in charge of a CDN config. You're all Akamai admins. And for you, the struggle was, hey, you're going to get requests from multiple teams. Your logic needs to be orchestrated in that way. And how do you make sure that you have, it's one monolithic file, and you get to change or make a change once in a staging environment? So how do you orchestrate all of that? So we heard, once, if I have to kind of condense everything into one single statement, was just give me a local Akamai server. That's all I need. Like I run this entire thing.
Local Akamai server, yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. I thought there was something else going wrong. All right, so, and that's the idea here, right? Which is, I just need, in my local environment, I have my Apache Node.js, just get Akamai as well in there. So we went back to the drawing board. We decided, OK, what can we do? So these are sort of representation of multiple sticky notes that we had on our whiteboard. So the first one was, all right, let's build a Docker container. How about let's just do that? Our legal team wasn't really happy about it. InfoSec definitely didn't want us to do that. And technically, it was just impossible to condense or squeeze all the different components that we had into a single Docker file. The next one was, all right, let's do virtual machines. How about that? Let's just go back to 2000s and figure this out. So then we've discovered, well, you can give a virtual machine, but which developer would like to have a 50 GB file downloaded into his laptop just to run another instance? So that didn't work. So the last option that you're seeing on the slide here is essentially a thin client. So what we did was we took our existing network, made it speak two languages. One is a sandbox network or sandbox language, and the other one is a staging language. And we incorporated a thin client. So a thin client is what you would install in your laptop. Think of it as a proxy that you would install in your laptop. And that proxy would communicate with our sandbox network. And that proxy is what you put in front of your dev environments. So that's what the Akamai Sandbox is. And in a high level, this is what the request flow looks like. So you have your user's laptop. It starts with the browser, or you typing in www.example.com, goes to the client. Client sends it over to the Sandbox network, where it picks up your own configurations. So again, the advantage here is the fact that everyone gets their own personal Akamai config. So everyone, like, you can build out different logic and test it out just by yourself. Like, you're not stepping on each other's on a staging network. You can test your own configs. And the best part, all of this gets activated in less than a minute. So you're not waiting any longer. So the final thing, kind of before I move it over to Paulo, I want to talk about, like, how does every user use the product today? So these are like the patterns that we have today. You have developers, you have ops engineers, and then you have CDN admins. So developers use this in their browser. They throw this into a container. What they do is, inside the container, they just pull in the thin client along with their Node.js or along with their dev environments, and they just open up a browser, whatever unit testing tools that they have, they send it over to the container. That's the developer setup. For the ops user, so they're the ones who are usually responsible for setting up Jenkins pipelines or any automation tools that they have. Again, this is being a thin client. You can just use the Akamai CLI for Sandbox and spin up the exact same thing. And the last one is your CDN admin, which, again, I would characterize Paulo as a CDN admin, where you can essentially go into Property Manager, build the code out, and then push it into a Sandbox to test it out. So there are two ways you can do this. One is, obviously, if you're brave enough, embrace PAPI JSON, make changes there. Otherwise, go into the UI, the Property Manager UI itself, use that as a scratch pad to actually make changes and push it into the Sandbox. And that's something that what Paulo is going to show you today. So with that, before I hand it off, one last thing. So the Sandbox is now available to all web delivery products. That means every Akamai account should have the ability to create 100 sandboxes in their account. So there's no additional cost. It's just there. It's a tool. Use it. So handing it over to Paulo. Here you go, Paulo. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Akhil. All right, so I'm not sure what you guys think about, what's your idea about a cruise? A lot of people that I speak with, they think that cruise is all about eating, right? So I'm going to try to change your perception. These are some of our brands: Royal, Celebrity, Azamara, TUI, Pullman Tours, Silver Seas. And we do have a B2B portal called Cruising Power for travel agents. Fun fact, Akamai has Edge servers. Celebrity has the Edge ships. And hopefully one day we can have Edge servers on the Edge ship at the edge of the ocean. So we've been trying that. It's kind of hard. So that was my plug there for the Akamai guys. Find out more at celebritycruises.com/edge. So cruising is fun, right? We have surf simulator, can golf on real grass. There's this hot glass blowing classes, water sliding, laser tag, skydiving simulator, can surf on a ship, right? I could be here for 10 minutes trying to describe this, but I'd rather just show you guys a quick video. It's not showing, okay? All right, demo gods.
You have to get out of the presentation.
Oh, I have to get out of the presentation, all right. There you go. Luckily, we have people like him here around. Thank you, sir. a bit of celebrity.
After 4 years of dedicated and passionate hard work, Celebrity Edge is finally here.
That's called the magic carpet. This whole venue goes up and down on the outside of the ship. All right, guys, there was a bit of RCCL for you. You know, let's just book cruises now. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. All right, so we have a lot of technology, you know, to deliver this awesome experience to our guests. And let me just go presentation mode again. Awesome. Okay, so all of our public websites, they are delivered via the Akamai platform. Right? We have Kona, we have the Ion, we have Cloudlets, and we follow an architecture pattern of a modularized website. So if you think of any travel business, hospitality business, you have a booking, check-in, you can buy merchandise, right? And these are all subsystems within our domain. It's all RoyalCaribbean.com, CelebrityCruises.com, but depending on the functionality that you're using on the site, you are hitting a different origin in the back end. Right? So all these rules for routing, security, caching rules, all happens at the Akamai platform. And we've been using this pattern for about 20 years now. So that successful implementation comes with a very strong partnership that we have with Akamai and IBM. And where, these days we have SaaS, PaaS, right? All these different hybrid architectures, cloud systems. And it's very easy for a third-party company to come into Royal Caribbean and say, yeah, we can do this for you. But when hard times happen, they're not there, they're unreachable, right? Akamai is always there for us, IBM is always there for us. So it's a very strong partnership. IBM and Akamai are committed to our success. So true story here, right? How do we change this platform? How do we test things on this platform? And what kind of risk is there? Pause here for a second. We have every single environment, non-production environment on Akamai, dev, test, stage, right? Multiple dozens of pod teams using these environments. So any disruption to a non-production environment is a project and a revenue impact to the company, right? So we have to minimize that to as much as we can. So how do we test this, right? Test takes time. If any one of you ever done an Akamai change, it takes time to propagate, right? And if you are in a room with your little pod team and you're trying to get things done or a little POC or trying to prove something, try to change something in that environment, you lose momentum, you lose focus, right? Okay, it's propagating to stage, let's go for a coffee, right? Or you look outside of the window, right? And you see a little bird and just there's no momentum, right? So we've seen tremendous improvement, but the truth is it still takes time, right? And nobody got time for that, right? If I had time, I would be at the beach or cruising. So we've been asking for years now, give me my own edge server. As an engineer, as a CDN admin, right? As a DevOps guy, I can care less about propagating this to thousands of servers at the moment of development. I just want to push a button and see my changes, right? So the sandbox is this magic thing that we've been asking for years now. Back in 1999, we would Akamaize just one line of object. We need to Akamaize this large image. And it was a phone call, it was an email, and sometimes 8 hours later, the change would be in production. And throughout times now, 20 years later, we can see the change happening in 40 seconds. And you will see this today during our demo. So, I want you guys to visualize the process before I start the actual demo. So how does that really work, right? You have to create your sandbox. And once you create your sandbox, unless you are extremely familiarized with the rule set JSON, and you have to generate that somehow. The best way to generate that rule tree is to go to Luna. You go to Luna, you develop your rule set the same way you do it right now, with the difference that you're not going to activate at the moment. You're just going to download that JSON object, and then you import that JSON object inside your sandbox. And then you go in this loop until you're satisfied with your changes. And then hopefully, if you're mature enough with your CI/CD pipeline, those changes will flow directly into your next environment, right? It's a beauty. So we adopted at Royal in IT this pattern of crawl, walk, and run, right? And I believe that now we are at the walk phase. So how do we define this crawl, walk, and run patterns? We create these things called cheat sheets. It works for us. Cheat sheets is a bunch of instructions categorized in our Confluence page. It works for us, right? It's not, again, we deal with many documentation systems, many platforms, many technologies. So sometimes it's difficult to quickly find documentation for what you're trying to achieve. So what we do, we create cheat sheets. And so in the crawl phase, you do cheat sheets plus get yourself familiarized with CLI. Just a quick hand count here. Who is using the CLI right now? Anybody using CLI? Right? Awesome. CLI will save you a bunch of time, right? And then what you will see is that the patterns that you identify using the CLI will become strong candidates for your pipeline, right? So define the cheat sheets, get your CLI set up, and then if you do this, you automatically are in your walk phase. And then, of course, automate all that, and you are in your run phase. So what does it take to install the sandbox? Assuming that you have the CLI installed properly, you need access to the Sandbox API. It's just to the user management credentials. Just give yourself access to the Sandbox. Then you install Node, you install Java 8, and then with a simple line like so, Akamai install Sandbox, you will have your Akamai Sandbox installed. Done, right? This is a reference for Sandbox link. So there's another aspect of the sandbox within Luna, where you can see how many sandboxes are being created. You can see their usage, pull some logs, decommission sandboxes, and do your cleanup of and management of the sandbox. Then you personalize your sandboxes, right? Change origin, make it HTTPS. You change the default port because you may be running, I don't know, some sort of WebSphere, WebStorm, Apache server in your local environment. Typical use case that I would like to mention is you want to see your website, your production website, your www website, but retrieving content from a CMS that's installed locally on the developer's machine. That is amazing, right? That is, as from the leadership team, right? You say, hey, developer Joe, how does the next CMS iteration works with the website? Oh, no problem, sir. I can just check here real quick on my sandbox, and then we'll get some gut feeling to see, if it will break anything, right? And get that, first impression of compatibility of your backend system with your origin, right? And your sandbox. All of that configuration is in this path. So more on the cheat sheet. So this is a cheat sheet that we use a lot right now in Sandbox. All the steps that are necessary to get your sandbox up and running. Hopefully you'll be able to take this home and just personalize, customize, put it in your cubicle, and just use it. And you see this. I'm not going to create a sandbox right now. I think for sake of time, but maybe if we have time at the very end, I can expedite a couple of sandbox create commands. Another cheat sheet. How do you update sandbox? You download the JSON rule format from Luna, and then with one line, Akamai Sandbox update rules, and in the path to your JSON, your sandbox will have the rule set that you just created. Also, it's not fully dependent on it, but get yourself familiarized with Property Manager API. all the activations of our configs at RCCL are done from a command line. We do not click on the Activate tab, select staging, wait for the page to load, click on the checkbox, add comments, scroll all the way down, go through all your warnings, and click Go, or whatever that button is to activate, right? One command line activates the config and staging network. And on a typical, sorry, jump slide here. So another cheat sheet for the property manager, we have these aliases. We love aliases, right? Don't try to memorize these commands all the time. They're kind of pretty long. So we create one alias. So to activate config on staging, I type aka-pm-stage space config name, and within 3 minutes, my config is activated on the staging network. So I have one for production and one for both networks. On a typical migration day, this is a real screenshot. We activate 14 configuration files all at once from the command line. And it's demo time now. All right. So, questions so far? No? Is it quiet? Microphones? Cool. All right. So what we have here on the bottom is the actual sandbox output screen, standard output. And I'm going to be clearing this screen right now, and I'll start the sandbox. Right? Akamai Sandbox. Start. Apparently nothing happened, right? But right now I have a sandbox running on my machine. I'm highlighting that on purpose on yellow there. I'm using the iTerminal tool. Look for these indicators. This right there, successfully launched Akamai Sandbox. It tells me the port 9550. Scroll all the way up here a little bit. On the very first line, at the end of the first line, right there, you will see where the configuration, right there, trying to highlight. You'll see where the configuration file for your sandbox is. I still remember the first time I did this. For some reason, I had a hard time finding where is this configuration file, right? But it's right there. The log will tell you, very first line. So in Luna here, I created a demo configuration file. edge19.rccl.com. So you have to force this, so the host name in this case is also edge19.rccl.com. You have to spoof the edge19.rccl.com to your local host, right? So it resolves through the sandbox. So I have here spoofed. There's this tool, gas mask, and it's spoofed to my local host right here, 127.0.0.1, right? And if I go to HTTPS, edge19.rccl.com, on that port, right, 9550, you get a cert warning here. And why it's not working. Oh, I know why it's not working. So let's check the configuration file. So it's .akamai. It's inside the cache. It's inside the sandbox. And it is sandboxes. Edge demo, and I want to VI this config file here. So I always using HTTPS protocol, right? So this has to be true. True. Save my changes. Because I changed the configuration file of the sandbox, I have to restart the sandbox. I put comma? Oh, somebody's paying attention. Thank you. Okay. There you go. So Control C here on the bottom screen. Again, Akamai Sandbox start. Started. Look for the successfully launched Akamai Sandbox. And if I refresh my screen now, I should still get a cert warning, because it's a self-signed cert. And I'm browsing the sandbox, and it's bringing up the Royal Caribbean website. Right, if I look at my configuration file, I have here the default origin is royalcaribbean.com. Right? I also have one origin for Akamai, one origin for Celebrity, and one origin for localhost. So the way I'm triggering this, it's through this request header called brand. So if I pass A, you will see that I'll be browsing. One second, I'm not really browsing. This is 9550. No, skip. Edge 19.rccl.com. Thank you, Akhil. 9550. So I have this plugin called Mod Headers. I'm going to pass brand A. Now I'm browsing the Akamai website, right? So how do we make a change here? So let's download that JSON from Luna, and let's import that JSON into the sandbox. Look at my time here. I have 2 minutes to finish this, 2.5 minutes to open 4Q. All right, so let's go to the Akamai one, just because we're there. Let me make sure that this file is on edit mode. This active version. So I'm going to be adding just a response header, right? A simple rule. So I'm going to come here, add a rule, right? Let's go blank rule is fine. Just say edge sandbox session, insert rule, right? And modify outgoing response headers. Insert the rule here. I'm going to be adding a custom other header. Let's just call it sandbox, right? And let's call it just Akamai brand. Okay, save it. Let me just quickly move this rule into the Akamai, right? Sub rule there. So now if I pass the brand A, it should set my Akamai origin, and it should pass this sandbox Akamai brand, right, as response headers. So how do we do this? You go back to, actually it's up here, view JSON. You download your rule as JSON. And I think I have a folder on my desktop. I should have a folder on my desktop. Right there, right? So what you do here, right, so the trick here to create momentum and create repeatability is just save the JSON, I don't know, to a small friendly name, right? Let's just call it edge.19.json. Save it. Then you preposition your terminal window in that folder. All right, so if I go to desktop, to my edge, what in the world? It's outside of the desktop, sorry. Okay, so it's right there, edge19.json, right? So the command to do so is Akamai Sandbox, update, -- rules, and the path to the JSON, in this case, edge19.json, right? In the meantime, I can always, on this other window here, I can say Akamai, I'm on the right-hand side window, Akamai pm.stage, and it's edge19.rccl.com. I'm going to be updating, propagating those changes, activating those changes on the staging network using the CLI. I really wanted to have those processes starting together, but you can see that the staging activation is taking a bunch of time here, like about 2 to 3 minutes, and the sandbox on the left-hand side already finished within 20 seconds, I guess. So now if I refresh my screen, developer tools, refresh, and I inspect. Clear this for a second. Come on, Akamai, load, all right. This is the Royal Caribbean origin, right? Oh, I know what's up. So if I look at the response headers, I have a sandbox brand, Akamai brand there. Also, another indicator that you are indeed on the sandbox is you have the X Akamai Sandbox true. Just in case if you're not using the port 9550 where it becomes extremely obvious that you are on a different port, right? You could set up your sandbox to port 80. And you look at the X Akamai Sandbox true, and then that tells you that you are indeed on the sandbox. So you saw it when that, and then you can just be on this loop, right? You go back to your config. I know that I activated this already, so I would have to create another version. But you just come back here, you do your change, you download your JSON, insert back into the sandbox, and then you're good. So that was a demo, right? What's next? And I think that's my last slide. So it's to further automate the replication process, right? Because now that you see that something's working on your sandbox, how do you take that to your next environment in an automated way? We have hundreds of configs at RCCL. It is a very laborious job to get those templates and apply templates to configs manually. You run into manual errors. Sometimes you might skip an environment. It's just difficult. If you do this job, you know that it's difficult to maintain your environments synchronized, right? So you just want to automate that. Maybe integrate your JSON snippets that you're downloading into your GitHub or your source repo or whatever you're using. You want to disseminate to developers. You want to make sure your developers are using it, right? A lot of times there are requests to my team to say, hey, can you point this environment to this origin? And then we have to have a committee, right? Can we really change this environment? Who's using it? What's the project that's being impacted by this change, right? So let the developer do this from their sandbox. So, and then again, make it easy to the developer. And at the end, the goal is to automate as much as possible, right? And that's it. Get start now. And that's the URL to get started. Thank you. So I ran a little over. We have, according to my clock here, 4 minutes and 47 seconds. I'm on?
Yeah.
All right.
Any questions? Mike's there. Anyone has any questions? Ooh.
Question right here. Mike, where's the mic?
Are you behind the proxy on your internal network?
Yep.
I have all the problems going with CLI,
Yep.
going testing on staging when I'm inside behind the proxy. Even installing I think CLI Sandbox doesn't work.
No, so we actually, that's a good feedback. So we actually had Paul from Kroger actually give us that feedback too. So the Sandbox now works with corporate proxies. So you can actually specify, if it's a password-based proxy, then you can actually specify that inside the client now. So you can actually say, like the config.json file that Paulo just showed, inside that you can actually say, hey, here's my corporate proxy IP address, here's my username, password, and the connections go through.
While we take questions, just for the sake of it, we'll delete and recreate a sandbox just so you guys can see it happening.
Yeah.
And as far as the service entitlements, it's just what's on the contract for web performance services. So you couldn't use a sandbox to evaluate something that wasn't currently on the contract.
That's a good idea. We've actually talked about it. Right now, it's about products that's accessible to you. That's the only one that we support because it's property manager. Like whatever products that you have in your property manager file, that's what you're going to support. But that's a good one.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions before we wrap it up? Or do we have time? Time?
We have 3 minutes.
3 minutes? OK. Any more questions? Either everyone got the whole thing and they know what needs to be done, or some of you are still confused. Good. Here you go.
Are the cheat sheets and all the other information from this PowerPoint, is that available for us?
Yeah, PowerPoints will be available through.
Do you guys
Can
know?
answer the question, but yeah, I know
I'll make sure that
They have been hunting us down for the copy of the PowerPoint, like the Akamai, event organization.
So the PPT short answer, it'll be
Yeah,
available. It'll be made available as part of all the speaking sessions. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just get with your account rep,
Yeah.
and your account rep will be able to track it down.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, there we go. Last one. No, there. Yeah.
So are you setting up rules ahead of time to make all these developer laptops open to the public internet? How's Akamai going to get to those origins?
So right now, the connections that you're seeing is outbound connections. So we actually use an encrypted protocol to our gateway. So and you're allowing, essentially, in the config.json file, you're saying, for this origin, this is what I need to access. So that's essentially how it's working. You're not, you can't actually have anyone else access the same connection because that has to go through our network in order to get into that local environment.
But Akamai still would need access to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So if let's say if
Yeah, I
I'm
don't think
running
we're currently set up to allow Akamai to access our entire corporate network.
Akamai trying to
Generally.
access private corporate network. Well, you're literally having a firewall kind of policy file in your config file or config.json where you're saying, if the request is only for origin-foo.com, then go to localhost. So if you're sending a request to something else, that proxy is effectively going to deny the request. So the connector that you're running in your laptop, it's also a proxy. And the config.json file is the configuration for that proxy. And you're essentially saying, in that config file, here's the whitelist. That means I know that if a request is only for origin-foo.com, then allow them to go to localhost. Rest of the requests are actually denied. Does that answer the question, or?
Maybe we have a side conversation.
OK, all right.
All right, we are out of time, I think. That's it. Thank you for
Awesome.
having
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.